phones and electronic devices, and stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If we could have the roll call, please.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Ms. Craig? Here. Mr. Sixma?
Here.
Ms. Shelley?
Here.
Mr. Costa?
Here.
Mr. Mills is out today. And Mr. Patterson?
He is present.
He's present.
Thank you.
All right, we have minutes from November 21st of 2024 and December 19th, 2024. We've all had a chance to review them. If I can get any corrections or changes, if not, I'll entertain motions.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Please continue. So we have a motion on both November and December's, and set the motion as well for both. So I have a motion by Ms. Shelley, Edith Shelley, and a second by Ms. Craig. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion, the minutes pass. All right, we have chair comments. First off, I'd like to say I am filling in for the chair, so today's might go a little sketchy, so please bear with me. On the chair comments, if you want to speak on any of the cases for or against that were being heard today, please fill out a card at the back of the room and hand it to Yolanda right over here, and you will be called up at the appropriate time. Also, we have a 3-minute time limit for each speaker on each particular case. And with that, we move to Mrs. Storia for a legal comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is information for members of the public as well as for applicants that decisions by this body on special exception cases and cases which rezone real property from one classification to another pursuant to the zoning ordinance are recommendations only to the county council and do not constitute a final hearing. New evidence may be introduced at the county council public hearing. Decisions on variances made by this body constitute final action subject to an appeal to the county council. And what this means is that no new evidence may be presented at the time of the county council public hearing on the appeal. An aggrieved party that appeals such a decision is confined to the record made before this body. Hearings by this body on rezonings, special exceptions, and variances are quasi-judicial in nature, meaning that this body is acting more like a court and must take into account all oral, written, or demonstrative evidence presented. Their decisions on these cases must be based on competent substantial evidence in the record, and competent substantial evidence has been defined as that evidence a reasonable mind would accept to support conclusion. I'd like to add that for your variance decisions, you need a minimum of 4 regardless of the makeup. So there's 5 current city present members, so any variance approvals needs 4 out of 5. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
4 out of 5, correct?
That's
and
correct.
the applicants each have an option to continue
Yes,
if they so choose. Thank you. Moving on to ex parte communications. If anyone on the committee would like to had any conversations, would you please acknowledge now? We'll start to my immediate right with Ms. Craig.
None.
None.
I did have conversations with the applicant on case V-25009. Also with the applicant on case S-25-004, and on case O-25-004, I initiated contact with a couple of experts in the field of stormwater. And that's it. And moving on. So we've got a couple cases that need to be continued or withdrawn. I believe these are all continuations, and they are case V-25006, V-25-007, V-25-008.
8?
4.
4 is under old business.
That's old business.
Yeah.
So we have 3 to be continued. 006, 007, and 008.
Okay, 008 is,
We show that under new business.
oh, we got moved, okay.
Yeah, they got moved.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll make the motion then that we, is it till the next meeting, continue the next meeting?
Trish,
Yes, sir, we're asking to continue till February 20th.
February 20th
February
meeting.
20th, okay,
Okay.
make a motion that case V25006, case V25007, case V25008 get continued to the February 20th, you say?
Just 20th.
February 20th meeting.
Second.
So I have a motion to continue cases V25006, V25007, V25008 by Mr. Sixma, second by Ms. Edith Shelley. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? None. We moving on to old business. And Ms. Shelley, would you read that case into the record, please?
Yes, sir. Case number V-25-004, application of Cobb Coal, agents for the owner, requesting a variance to the minimum yard requirements on transitional agriculture A3 zoned property.
And this one is Mr. Harris, I believe.
Yes. Good morning.
Good morning.
This case was continued from the December PLDRC hearing. The applicant is seeking variances to allow a block barn to remain in its current location. Variance 1 is to reduce the front yard from 40 feet to 30 feet. Variance 2 is to reduce the side yard from 25 feet to 7 feet. It is a 3.69 acre parcel in the De Leon Springs area. The previous owners permitted a house and an ag exempt block barn. The current owner purchased the property and combined 15 lots to produce one buildable site as part of the land exempt unrecorded subdivision. The property was later subdivided with the approval of the exempt unrecorded subdivision land number 2. This separated the house, which is now on the parcel to the west, and the subject block barn on the property. The owner is using the block barn as a single-family residence and did not obtain building permits. The property borders a heavily treed parcel on the southeastern portion of the site and has a 60-foot right-of-way along the southern boundary. The parcel is zoned transitional agriculture and has a future land use designation of rural, which is subject to setbacks of 40 feet for the front yard and 25 feet for the side yard. Staff recommendation is to approve variance requests 1 and 2 as it meets 3 of the 5 criteria. I'm available for any questions you may have.
Any questions for staff? Seeing none, is the applicant present? Good morning.
Good morning. For the record, Jessica Gowa, Cobb Coal Law Firm, 1 Daytona Boulevard, Daytona Beach, Florida. I have a PowerPoint. I'm not going to go over it in depth, but we'll have it for questions. Like Mr. Harris said, the property is in the A3 zoning district, and we're looking at variances to setbacks just to memorialize the existing structure that's been there. It's kind of a fun adaptive reuse of an existing barn. You know, it was exempt from permitting. They want to use it as a residence. We were asked to come through and help them go through and get it fully permitted and recognized. So this is the start of the process. We would go through with county staff on any permitting and building requirements after this. You can see the outline of the property here. Like it was noted, a lot of lots were combined into this overall. You've got some covered stalls in the rear for livestock horses. We did reach out to the property owner to the east and talk to them about the variance request. I don't believe they are here today. We went through kind of what we're requesting. This is the overall survey. You can see all of the former lots that existed. The pole barn has been in place. And we do want to point out that in terms of impact to adjacent owners, the nearest residence is what you see here on the screen, which is actually to the, I'm going to say west of the screen. I don't know where true north is. And it's about 450 feet away. And so the property directly adjacent to it, where we've reached out and talked to the owners, there's no residence there. And then there's a road beside that as well before you hop over to the next impacted area. So we're requesting this variance so we can go through the permitting process to get this recognized as a fun conversion of a former barn that's no longer used into a residence. And we're here for any questions.
Any questions for the applicant? I have a couple for you. So reading this, so they bought this in 2011.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been used as a residence since 11 or prior to?
No, I think this current owner is the one who converted to
Converted to residence. What precipitated the variance request? what started the ball rolling?
We came in later, and I'll defer to staff, but my understanding is she came in about a potential right-of-way vacation adjacent to the property,
Mhm.
and this was noted as an issue.
Okay, and
Yep.
that triggered that, okay. And that is the only dwelling, so it's not an ADU, it's actually the main dwelling for the whole property.
Correct.
The other 3 buildings that we're looking at look like to be metal barns,
Those are just covered stalls.
covered stalls,
Yep.
okay. All right, thank you. We'll see if we have any any public participation and call you up afterwards.
Thank you.
Do we have any public participation on this case?
No, sir.
Nope, seeing none. We'll move on to commission comments and/or motion.
I will make a motion for approval on case V25004.
Can you turn your mic on, Stoney, please?
Oh, actually, it is on. Hear that?
Now I can.
Okay. I'll make a motion for approval in case V25004 for the 2 variances, and I guess that's all it was, the 2 variances.
Second.
So we have a motion on case V-25004 and a second by Edith Shelley. All those in favor?
Aye.
First off, any discussion? No discussion on the motion?
Nope.
All those in favor?
Is that-
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Yeah, yeah.
Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to new business. If you would read the next case, which is 25009, please.
Yes. Case number V-25-009, a variance to the accessory dwelling unit ADU regulations on prime agriculture A1 zoned property.
And this one is also Mr. Harris.
Yes. The applicant is seeking a variance to convert an existing 2-story, 1686 square foot primary residence into an accessory dwelling unit and build a new 2,400 square foot primary residence. The variance is to allow the accessory dwelling unit to be greater than 50% of the size of the principal structure. The property is 10.12 acres in the New Smyrna Beach area. It is A1 zoning. The property is vested through an unrecorded exempt subdivision called Heiser Number 2. It is currently developed with a 1,686 square foot single family residence, a storage shed, a frame shed, a covered deck, and 2 pole barns. The proposed 2,400 the proposed 2,400 square foot principal residence allows a maximum ADU size of 1,200 square feet, but the existing 1,686 square foot single family residence that is to be converted exceeds this limit by 486 square feet. This is 70% of the living area of the principal structure. Staff recommendation is to deny variance request as it fails to meet 3 of the 5 criteria. Should the PLDRC find that the applicant has provided competent substantial evidence, the following conditions have been provided for consideration. Condition 1, the variance is limited to the size of the proposed ADU as shown on the variance site plan. Number 2, the applicant should apply for a change of use with the permit center to convert the principal structure to an ADU. And 3rd, the accessory dwelling unit must adhere to the same setback requirements as the principal detached single-family dwelling unit. I'm available for any questions you may have.
Any questions for staff? I do have one. Just to clarify, so the 50% mark, he'd have to build a 3,000 square foot house
Correct.
in order to avoid the whole variance process?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Could you please use your mic?
Sorry, I thought it was on. Has to meet the setbacks. That was one of the conditions.
Correct.
Does it currently meet the setbacks?
No.
It does not. Okay, thank you.
So let's go back to that one then. So are you saying that the existing residence does not currently meet the setbacks?
Oh, I thought you were asking about the proposed structure.
Any proposed building needs to meet the setbacks?
It
Okay.
currently does.
It currently does. 'Cause
Yes.
There was a comment. Okay, thank you.
And just to clarify, so this particular, what is currently shown as a primary residence, once the second residence is built, this one then converts to ADU?
Yes.
That's what we're talking about?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for staff? Is the applicant present? Please come up, state your name and address for the record.
Name is William Heiser. I live at 3313 Modena Way in Venetian Bay in New Smyrna Beach. The residence that we're looking at now, my dream was always to have some acreage. You know, when I retired, I was with the Volusia County Sheriff's Office in the K-9 unit for 20 years. And my family and I were really excited when we found this piece of property because it sits right next to the preserve, the Deep Creek Preserve. So we have horses that we keep on that property. And so I know I have 3 minutes here. So the residence on paper says it's 1,600.
You have all the time you need. That's for,
What?
you have all the time you need to
Okay,
speak.
3 minutes here, so I'm
Yep,
trying.
Go ahead.
So the residence actually says on a piece of paper that it's 1,687 square feet. That includes the loft upstairs. The loft upstairs is an A-frame house. So it's a deep house. So when you go up to the stairs, when you go up there, you actually have, I'd say 2 feet on either side of you that you can walk down. The rest of it, the A-frame, I mean, there's really nothing you can do up there except to put Christmas decorations and, you know, your storage up there. It also has a added-on laundry room, which is about another 100 square feet. So the actual living space is about 1,080 feet. I'm a happily married guy, but when you put my wife and myself in a 1,000 square foot house, I don't know how much I'll last at that. But so I was asking to build another home. Yeah, well, that's what I'm asking you for. I'm asking you for a separate house right now. Yeah, it's just at about 1,000 square feet. So we're not looking, you know, I'm looking to put something, and it was 2,400 square feet. By the time I put garage on it and a patio out back and whatnot, it was actually it'd be 4,100 square feet. So I'm trying to keep it at around 2,400 square feet. So I'm asking that you'll give me some mercy and understand and maybe allow me to do that.
Any questions for the applicant? I have a couple for you, if you don't mind.
Yes.
First off, you mentioned that your current address is in Venetian Bay. So would this property be your primary residence if this passes and you're allowed to build that other house?
Yeah, so that's what we're doing. We're going to build a house and move there. I don't know if you know about Venetian Bay, but it was a nice, quiet, beautiful little community here. But behind us, they're putting up 750 homes now and traffic, and it's just not.
Yep, I'm aware. The other question is, with this now existing structure becoming an ADU, what's the intended purpose? Are you planning on renting this out? Being that you're up against a preserve, is this like a temporary day trip or rental? What's the
No rental. I don't want anybody in my house. I'm kind of anal about how I keep my property and stuff. So that would actually be my children and grandchildren are up in South Carolina and North Carolina. So it would be, a week when they came down to visit us Christmas time during the holidays and during the summer that they'd have somewhere to go other than the tent that I'm going to have out back for them if we don't get it.
Okay. And then lastly, you did see that the 3 conditions, should this be approved, that was listed by staff on the back, and you're okay with those 3 conditions?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's see, we have any public comments? If not, we'll move on from there. You may have a seat now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any public comments on this case?
No, sir.
I have a comment.
We have a comment. Go right ahead.
I would like to commend you on being sensible about the size of the property and not feeling like you have to push the limit as far as the size that you can go. So I commend you on that.
Any public comment? No? No public comment? With that, we'll close the floor for public comment, and we'll open it up for discussion and/or a motion.
I'll be glad to make a motion.
Please proceed.
I move that case number V-25-009, a variant, be approved, subject to the 3 staff conditions.
Second.
All right, so I have a motion on case V-25-009 to approve the variance with the 3 staff recommended conditions by Edith Shelley and second by Stoney Sixma. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Heiser. And now we'll move on to the next case.
Case number V-25-011, variances to the minimum yard requirements, the rural agricultural estate RA classification.
And this one is Mr. Shams.
Hi, good morning.
Morning.
Steve Shams with Planning and Development. So this site is developed with a single-family home that was built in 1985. In 1992, multiple accessory structures were built without permits, and these included a detached garage, a storage shed, and a canopy. The garage was later expanded. The property was sold to the current owners last December. The applicant is requesting after-the-fact variances for an unpermitted detached garage and a canopy structure in the southwest corner of the site. There is a code violation for these unpermitted structures, so gaining the variances would allow them to come into compliance. Variance 1 is to reduce the south rear yard from 45 feet to 7.2 feet for the detached garage. Variance 2 would reduce the western side yard from 25 feet to 0 feet for the garage. And variance 3 would reduce the western side yard from 5 feet to 4 feet for the canopy. Overall, staff recommends approval as the variances meet 3 of the 5 criteria. We do recommend 2 conditions: that the variances are limited to the size and location of the structures, and that the applicant must apply for building permits within 90 days of variance approval. There was 1 letter of opposition that's been provided to you. This is from the most affected property owner on the western side, and he has requested that the garage be reduced back to the original construction and that the expansion be removed. I'm available for comment or question.
Any questions for staff,
I have a question.
please?
What are the directions on the scale, what we have in front of us? Is this north at the top,
Yes, ma'am.
south, east? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
And we have 2 staff recommended conditions. Anybody other questions for staff? I have 1 question. Curious on variance 2, the approval from 25 to 0 feet, which would be, that is the garage extension itself, correct?
Yes.
So you say it meets 3 of the 5,
Yes, sir.
and that's the one that we have the letter of opposition against, correct?
Correct.
Now, that extension, did it require a permit?
Yes, it would.
Was it permitted?
No, sir.
So this variance would then take care of that permitting process as well?
Well, it would allow the garage to be permitted as it is today. They could move forward to permitting.
The garage itself or the extension, or both?
Both.
Both, okay. So neither the garage nor the extension are
That's
permitted?
correct.
Okay. All right, any other questions for staff?
Nope.
And is the applicant present? Please come up, state your name and address for the record.
Robert Keller for the record. Any questions?
Your address, please.
So originally the property was under Richard Bodine. That's where the application was initially made, where I worked with Stephen Shams. When that application was put forth, he's my grandfather-in-law. We went under contract and we since sold to John and Myra.
Okay.
And since selling to John and Myra, the application has moved forward. The structure, what you'll probably have questions with, the garage extension, which abuts to that 0, it's really independent of the concrete block. They are attached, but the concrete block garage is what is of most value in
Okay.
this particular situation.
So the extension is basically just a lean-to?
It is, yes.
Okay.
That's correct.
All right. Any questions for the applicant? We do have 1 letter of opposition. Have you had a chance to review that one?
I have not looked at the letter of opposition. I have spoken with.
You have
probably
spoken to
whoever's-
Mr. LaFleur?
Yes, Bruce, correct.
And?
It seems like we're in agreement on the concrete block garage staying. I believe he may be in disagreement with the other items.
Well, let me read this excerpt. So he says, however, I am adamantly opposed to any variance allowing the plywood addition to the block garage constructed after
The lean-to.
2006.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any issues with potentially removing that, or the new owners, I should say?
No, I don't think that would be an issue.
Okay. All right, we'll see if we have any public participation. If we do, we'll call you back up, give you a
Okay.
chance to rebuttal.
Thank you for your time.
Do we have any public participation on this one?
No, sir.
We have a gentleman who'd like to speak.
Okay.
Come on up, state your name and address for the record, and if you would please afterwards fill out the form at the back of the room and hand it to Yolanda.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm Bruce LaFleur, 4200 Falling Leaf Drive.
Okay.
the abutter to the west. I'm most affected by all of these variances. In agreement with Mr. Keller, I'm not objecting to the concrete block garage. It's only fair that that be allowed to stay, since it was 2002 before our properties were subdivided. However, all the other appurtenances there, that garage extension, which is not just a lead-to, it's completely enclosed. It actually encroaches on my property by a half a foot. I have a survey here if you're interested in seeing it. It's impossible to even access the outside of it without trespassing on my property. I'm adamantly opposed to that, to the metal shed and the canopy roof, which is in disrepair. And with all the hurricanes we have, I'm concerned about it flying off and damaging my property or people on my property. It's a 2-acre property. There's plenty of room there. There's no reason why all these buildings have to be built right on my property line. So basically, I'm not against the concrete block garage staying, but all the other buildings there. There's also a propane tank that's 5 feet from the property line that wasn't permitted and isn't to code zoning. These have all been cited by code compliance 5 months ago, and they're telling me that it's all gonna have to be permitted. I don't see how it could be permitted because none of it is to code.
So any questions for this gentleman? No? I have one comment to make. So if the variances go through, any of these go through at all, it's going to trigger the building permit process. So any of these that are not to code will be bared out during that permitting process, and either would have to be replaced, repaired, or removed. So.
No, I like assurance of that. I also don't think it's fair that the new owner in the last month is being saddled with this.
Mm-hmm.
The current owner who built all of these know what the code was and proceeded to do it without permits or illegally. So that's where I stand.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll give the applicant an opportunity to rebuttal that.
So I think we're in agreement on the concrete block garage likely being fine. As far as permits go, and we'd prefer to keep any structure that we could, presuming it would also be set in place, and we'd have to then, double permit.
That's outside, the permitting
Yeah.
is outside our purview, so that's.
Yeah, it wouldn't, there's not a lot of value in the garage extension.
Okay. So you wouldn't be opposed to removing that as part of the conditions? Of these
I
variances?
believe, that's not gonna be an
Okay.
issue. Yes.
Please.
What's the purpose of the canopy?
It's like a shed covering for maybe parking a vehicle underneath.
Is it currently being used?
Yes.
Any other questions for the applicant? No? No further questions?
Thank you.
All right, then if there's no other comments from the public, we'll close the floor for public participation and open this up for staff discussion and/or a motion. Any comments?
Yes, excuse me, I am opposed and will be voting no if we're including all this on variance 2, going to 0. And I'm also very concerned about variance 3, going that foot. I know a foot's a foot, but looking at the property line, that is extremely close when it could be. So that one I'm iffy on, but I'm definitely prepared to vote no on all 3 of these together.
Anyone else?
What's that, did I hear what the extension was made of?
Plywood.
Plywood, okay.
So the applicant's saying that they would have no problem, as part of a condition, is to remove that garage extension, which is also what the, Mr. LaFleur's, adamant opposition was to.
Mm-hmm.
The condition of the canopy and the shed themselves will be borne out during the permitting process. If I'm misstating something, please correct me, but I think that is basically, the variances then allow this to go into the permitting process, and the permitting is going to have to go out, it's have to meet current code. So if they're not up to current code, they will either have to be repaired, replaced, or removed.
Yeah.
I personally don't have a big issue with the 1 foot on variance 3. I'm glad that the variance 2 basically falls off the table with both the applicant and the opposition agreeing that by the removal, that variance kind of goes away. And so we're really just dealing with variances 1 and 3. So if you guys want to take another look at that, if you
Well,
look at it from that
Mr.
perspective.
Mr. Chair, just,
Yes.
just
We have to vote no. I
Yes,
mean, we do have
correct.
to vote on, okay,
Correct,
thank
yes.
you.
We still have
just
to
a
vote
a
on it, yes.
clarification. If you remove variance 2 relates to the concrete block garage plus the garage extension.
Plus the extension.
If you remove the extension, if you
Mhm.
don't grant that,
Mhm.
you would still need to grant a variance for the concrete block garage because it's in excess of 500 square feet and needs to meet the principal setback. So that variance 2 would go from 0 feet to 12.3 feet
Okay.
to accommodate the existing concrete block garage only. They would have to demolish the extension.
The extension would have to go down, but the concrete garage goes, now the variance would read from 25 feet to 12.3
For the concrete block
for
garage
the concrete
only.
garage
Yes.
only. That's pretty clear as mud.
Yeah.
All right. So, let's kick this around. Where are we at? Anybody?
Is, a question here also. When we did the roll call, it was made mention that Mr. Patterson was here.
Mm-hmm.
Is he listening to the meeting? Is he able to vote on this? Because currently, there's
There's only 4.
4 of us up
Mhm.
here.
It'd have
So,
to be a unanimous, or they could have to do a
Yes.
continuation. Yep. That's why I'm trying to get a feel for where we are to give the
well,
applicant that
I'll
option.
be, I'm not in favor. I'm concerned.
On all 3?
No, not on all 3. On the western side yard issues.
If they make the variance, I mean, the corrections on variance 2, I would be fine with it, take the extension off and whatnot, but.
So variance 2 would, one of the conditions would be on variance 2 that they remove the garage extension,
Uh-huh.
and then variance 2 would be an approval from 25 feet to 12.3 feet.
Correct, I understand that.
Okay.
Mhm, I
So
understand that
are
one.
we in agreement with that?
Yes,
If,
I am.
yes.
Okay.
I'm not about, yes.
All right, so we can add that as a condition. And then on variance 1, any issues with that?
No,
And variance 3,
yes,
you have an issue with that, with the 1 foot, with the 1 foot variance?
yes.
I'm also, I've gotten lost now as.
I'd feel much better if I had a picture of the canopy of what was there. It just says 3 canopy. Okay, is it like a pole barn? Is it a solid building? Is it,
But if it doesn't meet code, it'd have to be torn down anyway,
The
correct?
permitting, yeah, during the permitting process, it will,
but
it
if we
bears
approve
itself
the variance, wouldn't it be allowed to go in the same place?
in the same location, yes.
Yes, which I'm opposed to.
Okay.
So am I.
All right. Hearing that, I'm addressing the applicant now, is that you need a 4 majority or ask for a continuation to come back when we have a full commission. That's your choice at this point in time, before we call for a vote. Yes, you may come up.
Okay. So Edith, correct?
Yes.
Thank you, Edith. So your issue is, or you have a issue with the 4-foot variance asking for the extra foot on the canopy. I
What-
believe I don't know if it's included. I have to
I don't
kinda
have
run
any
through.
picture.
Yeah, I had an aerial included in the application on
Well,
the. Yeah, no, it's okay.
Yeah,
I
I'm-
believe you.
No,
I
no,
believe
I'm
you.
sure of that, but it was
Yeah.
a strange delivery of our packets
Yeah,
this
it's
time,
like
so
a pole
different-
barn. Yeah,
Did
it's
you
like a
not,
steel pole barn.
it's a pole barn, so it's totally open,
Yes, it is.
except
It
for
is.
the
It
roof?
is. Yes, there is only a steel. It's a steel.
Right, to cover
4
cars,
poles,
it looks
yep.
like for extra
Exactly.
parking?
Yes. Yes. No sides.
Okay, strictly a pole barn, no walls.
No walls.
Do you have a picture of it at all with you?
Let me see.
Yeah, I would love to see a picture of it.
Yeah. I mean, it's not going to be a great
I mean, I
picture because it's
understand
an
why
aerial
it's
and it's
there.
further away.
Sure, but it still gives,
It would be helpful for your reference.
because I
agree.
understand, because you have it there because of the driveway and for extra parking. I
Yeah.
understand all that,
Let
but,
me see. Oh, here's my application.
and then if
Would
we.
you mind if I bring it up? It's very difficult. It's not going to help.
Go to
Go through
there, and
Yolanda.
she'll put it up so
Yeah, she'll
we
put it
can
up on the
all
screen.
see.
It's tiny.
Um, Okay, so I would be willing to, I'm definitely opposed to the, what is
Uh-oh.
it? It totally disappeared. Oh, she's
I tapped
putting that
black.
up.
Okay. I thought I did it. I'm like, I don't
Do
know.
it up there.
I can't fix this.
It's a virus. I'm to the garage extension. That's
Yeah.
definitely out for
Yeah.
me. The canopy,
That's reasonable.
if it indeed is the pole barn look and open,
Mm-hmm.
I would approve, but only that and not for replacements.
I think that's reasonable.
I mean, it would have to be that. They can't extend it. They can't go closer. I mean, I would not agree to anything like that, making it bigger or enclosing it,
Yes.
because that makes a difference too, I think.
There's not much detail we can see on that.
Yeah, I know.
picture.
That's the only thing I could think of, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, that didn't help.
If
me at
I
all.
could blow, I told you it's smart.
Better
Yeah,
eyes.
yeah, you tell me.
Oh, my gosh.
Okay,
Need microscope eyes for
It's
that.
you can.
Well, no, I can see.
You can see
because
that it's
I'm
clear
looking
in
up. I
air.
can see it's.
Yeah.
it's-
See through it.
Yes, I can
Okay.
see it's that you go through it. I
Okay.
don't know that there's not a wall on the western side, but I know it's,
Any wall would be removed because I can guarantee you it is a pole barn with no sides.
okay, can I get you to sign that for me up here? Just kidding. I have a
I'll-
notary here.
I'll remove it.
You can make it a condition
Okay.
of the variance that it remain a pole barn and unenclosed by.
Thank you,
Okay. All right,
because it is just a foot, so I understand that.
Yeah.
Any other questions for the applicant?
No.
No? You may be seated.
Thank you for your time.
All right, we're back to us and discussion on this case. Or a motion, and I think that we could take these variances one at a time if you like,
I think
since
Edith's
we've
ready
got
for
conditions
motion.
individually. Yep. So whoever would like to start that?
So am I hearing you say that we have the option to do them one at a time?
Yes.
Or, okay. Then I will make a motion, case number, and I know, case number V-25-011, variance 1 be approved. Variance 2 be denied, and variance 3 be subject to a condition that the canopy, that it remain open, and that be a condition of the variance. Does that work?
Variance 2 should be changed
Yep.
because variance 1 and 2 combined. So variance 2 should be changed to reduce the western side yard from 25 feet to 12.3
3.
feet.
Oh, okay.
Only for
And the
the
removal
concrete
of the
block
extension.
garage.
Oh, that, I wrote that over
Yeah.
there, okay.
And then for variance 3, that should be a pole barn that remain open and unenclosed.
And then remain open and
You want to reread that again?
Canopy, yeah, canopy, open canopy that's unenclosed.
Okay.
okay, open canopy, remain. Okay.
Try it one more time.
All right, case number V-25-011, variance that we approve, variance 1,
As is?
as is.
Mhm.
That variance 2, the western side yard goes from 25 to 12.3.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
For the concrete garage
I like all
only.
this positive feedback, thank you. And that variance 3, that we'll approve that variance with the condition that the,
Pole barn stay open.
Remain open.
I've got it,
Okay.
the condition that the canopy pole barn remain open and unenclosed.
Perfect. Second.
All right, let me see if I can follow this correctly. So, and with the, and we still have conditions, 2 conditions by staff.
Yes,
Yeah.
subject to the staff conditions.
You second that as
Second.
well?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's try this from the top. So case -25-011, we have a motion by Ms. Shelley and a second by Mr. Sixma to, yes,
Okay, go ahead.
to approve variance number 1 as is. Variance number 2, to approve it with the reduction of the western side yard from 25 feet to 12.3 feet for the concrete garage only, and the removal of the the extension, garage extension. And on variance number 3, approve it with the condition that it remain an open canopy or open structure, pole barn canopy only,
Open and unenclosed.
open and unenclosed.
Perfect.
Okay? Did I cover that all?
Yes, sir.
All right. If there's no further discussion, we'll go for a vote.
One question.
Yes, ma'am.
On variance 2.
Yes.
Do we need to mention removal of the garage extension, or will
I
that
think
be
you
I
did.
believe I
You
just did.
Yeah,
Yep.
you did.
I did.
Yeah.
Did that go on the record?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
They would have to remove it because you're not, it would be in violation.
It would be in violation because we're already reducing the setback?
Yes.
Okay. We're good?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we'll call this to a vote then. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion passes. Thank you for your time. That's a tough one. Yeah. All right, next case, please. 25.
Case number V-25-012, variance to the minimum yard requirements in the transitional agriculture A3 zoning classification.
And this one is Mr. Shams as well.
Hi, good morning again. So the site is currently developed with a 2,537 square foot home, an in-ground pool, detached garage, carport, and 2 canopies. The pool was constructed in 2004, and the current owner purchased the property in 2017. He requires consistent access to his pool year-round for therapy treatments. It needs to be protected from direct sunlight and inclement weather. He is proposing to construct an 1,170 square foot accessory structure around the pool. This structure will have a solid roof and walls with sliding glass doors. The pool is currently 6.8 feet from the rear property line, which is consistent with the zoning ordinance requirements, but constructing the proposed structure around the pool would place it within the rear yard. Due to its size, it would need to meet principal setbacks, and A3 requires a 40-foot rear yard. So the applicant is requesting a variance to reduce the rear yard from 40 feet to 6.8 feet. Overall, staff recommends approval as it meets 3 of the 5 criteria. I'm available for comment or question.
Any questions for staff? I do have a question. Could you rephrase that? So the pool itself being 6 foot off the property line is acceptable,
Yes, sir.
but as soon as he puts the enclosed structure,
Yes.
if it was a screen room, would it also be subject to 40 feet?
No, sir. If it was a pool enclosure, it
Uh-huh.
would be fine. But he wants to put a physical building around the pool, which is a
To
different
make it an
story.
enclosed pool, basically?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that requires the 40 foot, hence the variance?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Any questions for staff? No? Is the applicant present, please? Come up, please. State your name and address for the record.
Morning.
Good morning.
My name is Terry Myers. My address is 5731 Walter Street, De Leon Springs.
You've heard the staff comments. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I have a couple of pictures. I also have a letter from my VA stating that I need the alkaline hydrotherapy
Mhm.
for my disability.
Mm-hmm.
So I have that, and the thing is that I know 4 people that have replaced their screens 4 times this year.
Sure.
It just went through the 80 mile an hour, it's like, that's why I'm going with the hard cover so I can insulate it and keep it. And I'm going to be running 100% solar on everything on that. So it's going to be, very green. I have a very wooded lot. And it's a very unique building if you want to see a few pictures.
If you turn those in, you know you won't get those back.
Good, that's fine.
Okay. If you would give those to Yolanda at the other end,
Thank
please.
you.
Yeah, there you go. The contractors that I contracted, they put up the building, and I assumed they were getting permits, and they just ghosted me. They did not get back to me, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm going through the process because I feel it needs to be done.
Okay.
And I said the building has already been through an 80 mile an hour, 100 mile an hour winds already, so really, I'm working on it now because I can't do a lot, so I'm I'm at the mercy of some predatory contractors, so, but I'm getting it there, I have all those, so those pictures will depict some of the, I got some of the windows, but everything is all, is either Lexan or it's safety glass. All the windows are in accordance to that. And then I do, I work on movies. I'm a scenic painter, prop builder, so I have some other pieces of movie stuff. Wasn't me.
No.
Okay, we're having,
It's probably me.
it's all day. We've got
Okay,
some,
good.
we've got some gremlins in the machine today.
I look
Gotcha.
too hard.
So, you know, I'll have a few of those things in it, but then this way I can continue with my therapy without, and my retirement without,
I have a quick question for you after seeing these pictures. So the construction has begun, or
yes, sir.
partially begun, it looks like.
Yes,
Okay, and so it's stopped now for this variance.
yes, sir.
Okay,
I have everything sitting there on site.
okay.
I have pictures of the footers were put in, everything was put in, rebar, all that stuff. I have I have the pictures of all that, 14-inch footers, everything done, you know, sorry, to code. So, and if I could, I'm sorry, I have so many unorganized. Here we are.
So this is a permitted structure, correct?
Pardon me?
Permitted structure?
Oh, yes, yes, sir.
Okay.
Here is I have pictures of the footers, if I can just.
No, that's,
You don't
I
need those?
think,
Okay.
yeah, we're good.
It has, you know, everything was by code, and the building is, sorry, I'm talking my hands. But the building with the engineer and all the prints and all that stuff are in my folder. And, you know, everything's all engineered and all that, and then when it came like, why don't I have a permit? And then they wouldn't even answer my phone call anymore.
So we're just approving the setback, the variance for
Yeah.
the setback itself, because the building is going through the permitting process. Do we have any other questions for the applicant? No? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Do we have any public participation on this case?
No, sir.
No, we do not.
Motion?
Yep, we'll close the floor and open up for discussion and/or a motion.
I move that we approve case number V-25-012, variance to the minimum yard requirements in the transitional agricultural A3 zoning classification. And, yes, that's my motion.
Okay. So I have a motion to approve case V-25-012, to reduce the eastern yard from 40 feet to 6.8 feet by Ms. Ida Shelley, and a second by Stony Sixma. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Case passes. Thank you. Thank you for your service as well. Next case, please.
Yes, sir. Oh, got it. Okay, I got it. Thank you. Case number S-25-004, time extension for a special exception for temporary campsites on prime agriculture A1 zoned property.
And this one belongs to Ms. Smith.
Hello.
Good morning.
This is an existing special exception for temporary campsites for associated with the Daytona International Speedway, Bike Week, and Biketoberfest. The applicant's asking for a 2-year time extension to continue existing operations through Biketoberfest 2026. This facility's been in operation since 1996 and is probably familiar to most of you. We are making roadway improvements on Pioneer Trail and CR 415 that will impact this property. The applicant will need to come in and do a new special exception and a new site plan after construction is done, but we are asking you to approve that 2-year extension because we can't reconfigure the site until we know what area we have to work with. So we're recommending approval of the time extension.
Any questions for staff?
What are they doing with that intersection right there? That's always
Well,
a
Tad
critical
is here, but I
spot.
believe that's a roundabout.
That's, yeah.
It's gonna be a roundabout? Okay.
We
Of
do
course.
have our county engineer if he wants to come tell us.
I didn't know there's enough room to do a roundabout there, but.
There's not.
Good morning, Tad Casebeer, County Engineer.
Good
Yes,
morning.
sir, we are doing a roundabout. We had to purchase property from 3 of the 4 property owners to fit it in, but that's what we're doing.
But won't that come like right at the front door of where Cabbage Patch is at?
Yes, sir.
Dangerous.
Well, it changes the traffic pattern. It will no longer be a continuous run of asphalt where they can just enter the road wherever they like to.
Yeah.
They'll have to come in through designated driveway locations, which actually will make it safer. Now the drivers moving through the roundabout or through that intersection will have an idea of where traffic would be added as opposed to anywhere along there.
When is all that supposed to start?
Actually, we've got the construction contract all set. We're ready to go ahead and start here in the near future. in
Okay.
the next 3 to 4 months. Obviously, we don't want to get started before Bike Week.
Bike week, right, yeah,
But
okay.
there's always an event coming up, so at some
Yeah.
point, we got to pull the
Yeah.
trigger and get started.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? I have a quick question for you. Well, a comment, more a comment than a question. Trish mentioned the roadway improvements. I opposed the roundabout from day one, and I still oppose it as a resident on 415. Yes, this is going to basically put the roundabout directly in front of the door, the entrance to
That's what I was
the
thinking.
Cabbage Patch.
Yeah.
And the only thing I would say if I was the owner of the Cabbage Patch is I would look for a variance and see if I could serve alcohol right out the front door as you're driving by.
Yeah,
To a drive-by like they do in Louisiana, but I don't think that's going to happen in Florida. That's it. Thank you.
No, yeah, we won't be using the roundabout as a drive-through.
All right. Any other questions for staff? Is the applicant present? Please come up, state your name and address for the record.
Roger Lusner, 3862 Pioneer Trail.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You heard the comments from staff. You heard the comments from the engineer. Do you have anything you all want to add?
The only thing I'm concerned is protection of the building, some bollards or something being put in, accidents, people coming through that intersection with the roundabout,
Mm-hmm.
protecting the building.
Mhm.
At this point, the attorneys and the engineers have been working. Still don't really have clarification of a guardrail or bollards or anything being put in the event of an accident, somebody coming through that roundabout, protecting my building and the patrons there.
So it's definitely going to change the look of the frontage look of the building, the roundabout, would you say? In the sense of,
To the south, so it's not affecting the building itself, but
Mhm.
it's more protection of the cars and stuff.
Okay.
Coming through
Chair,
that intersection.
this is a time extension for
Only.
the,
okay.
for campsites.
But the issue that I have with the campground is there's reconfiguring the driveways and entrances and exits. We're still kind of negotiating that stuff out as far as how you're actually going to be able to get in and out of that campground. So that's what we're looking at.
So you'll be back
doing an
again in 2 years to go through this again.
to do this again.
Okay. All right. Any questions for the applicant? Nope. Thank you. You may have a seat. Any public participation on this one?
I'm ready to make a motion.
No, sir.
No. All right. So we'll close the floor and we will open it up for a motion.
Okay, I'll make a motion, case S25004 be forwarded to the county council for their approval with the staff's 2 conditions.
Second.
And we have a motion on the floor by Mr. Sixma and a second by Edith Shelley on case S25-004 to forward the special exception case to the county council for final action with a recommendation of approval. Do we have any comments? Any discussion on the motion? If not, we'll take it to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Case passes unanimously. Thank you. Next case, please.
Yes. Case number PUD-24-011, application of Storch Law Firm, attorney for Henro LLC owners requesting a rezoning from the Business Planned Unit Development and Resource Corridor zoning classifications to the Planned Unit Development PUD and Resource Corridor RC zoning classifications.
And this one belongs to Mr. Shams.
Hi, good morning. So the applicant is proposing to reinstate an expired PUD. The PUD was originally approved in 2008, but expired in 2013 because it did not proceed to final site plan. The site is split zoned BPUD and RC. The RC area is not changing, and the applicant is proposing to place the RC area in a perpetual conservation easement. Historically, the site was a Stuckey's truck stop from the 1960s to about 1985, but has since been physically removed. Only driveways to US 1 and Kennedy Parkway remain. The subject site remains undeveloped, and the applicant is proposing to develop the site utilizing the same conceptual plan approved in 2008 by the County Council. The proposed PUD will not deviate from the original approval. The proposed uses include 12,000 square feet of non-residential use and 4 vehicle fueling stations under a canopy. The site is within our natural resource management area and will require a 50-foot buffer from all wetlands. Environmental permitting has reviewed the project and did not object to the PUD's reinstatement. Overall, staff recommends forwarding to the county council with a recommendation of approval. I'm available for comment or question.
Any questions for staff? No. Is the applicant present? No applicant either? Okay. Any public comments?
No, sir.
None of those? All right, so we will close this floor then for public comments, and we will open the floor for discussion and or a motion.
I just kind of want to make sure that, you know, on the record, the applicant has been notified of this meeting. It's been advertised.
Mm-hmm.
So applicant has kind of waived, I guess, any right to present additional evidence and to contest any
Right.
determination of this board.
And this is basically just a reinstatement of something that was previously passed, and the timeline has lapsed. Is that basically the? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right.
What is the time that they're asking for? Is it for the or not continuance, but for
So this is a new PUD, so they're basically starting over, utilizing previously approved material.
It's approved back in '08,
right,
if I remember
I know
right.
it's
Yep.
approved, but,
Yes.
okay.
Okay.
But it ran out of the, so I was wondering if they don't do anything, do they have a chance to do this again? I mean, if they're,
Yeah, if approved by the county council after this meeting, it would start then.
New clock.
Yes.
right,
They would need to go through final site plan, and they have 5 years to apply for final site plan.
thank you, that's what I wasn't asking the question right, thank you.
All right. I'll entertain a motion.
I just sort of have a problem when the applicant doesn't show up for something like this. This is a big, a big deal.
And I'm surprised by the applicant on this one, yes?
Yeah, me too.
Do we want to continue?
I need a motion for that as well. If you want to put a motion in place for that?
I would definitely say give them a chance to continue this. I wish we would have heard from them though, so.
So make a motion to continue PUD dash 24-011 to the February
20th.
20th.
20th PLDRC meeting.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor to continue case PUD-24-011 to the February 20th, 2025 PLDRC meeting by Ms. Shelley, Edith Shelley, and a second by Stoney Sixma. Any discussion on this? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, so this case is continued. All righty, moving on.
Right. Okay.
And if you would read, I think
Got it.
CPA
CPA, yes, I'm
and
just-
Z, both of them together.
Oh, read them, yes.
Yep, because they're both the same.
That's what I was, they are together, okay. Case number CPA-24-006, small-scale comprehensive plan amendment from the Osteen Transitional Residential TR Future Land Use designation to the Osteen Mixed Use Village FLU designation. And case number Z-24-010, rezoning from the Osteen Transitional Residential Zoning Classification to the Osteen Mixed Use Village OMV zoning classification.
All right, and this one is Mr. Shams as well.
Hi, good morning. So the applicant is proposing a future land use change for the eastern 6.01 acres of a 12.98 acre site from Osteen TR to Osteen MUV. The remaining 6.97 acres adjacent to State Road 415 are already MUV, and the applicant is also proposing the companion rezoning application. They intend to develop the site with 80 townhomes. The future land use change to MUV is necessary to meet the housing density. The site is subject to the Osteen local plan. In accordance with the local plan, Volusia County and the city of Deltona entered into a joint planning agreement to coordinate the review. The city did review the request and found it consistent with the JPA. In addition, the applicant has also proposed a revision to the normal line located on site with this application. According to the applicant's request, the current normal line is not entirely indicative of environmental conditions, and it encroaches too far into the site as a result of a mapping error. The new normal line uses a wetland delineation and will include the wetlands along the southern boundary of the site and a 50-foot wetland buffer. Environmental permitting supported the proposed normal line. The site is developed currently with a 720 square foot mobile home and was operating as a tree farm from 1987 to 2012. The site was sold to the current owners in November 2021. It is located on the east side of State Road 415. Generally, the west side is within the city and the east is within the county. There are single-family residences adjacent to the site along the east side and a major commercial plaza northwest of the site at the intersection of 415 and Howland Boulevard. With the current future land use designations, the site can be developed with 77 units or a density of 5.93 units per acre. If approved, it could be developed with a max density of 101 units. However, the applicant is proposing a maximum build-out of 80 dwelling units, or approximately 6.16 dwelling units per acre. So it's an overall increase of just 3 units. The higher density of MUV designated properties are directly adjacent to 415, and the lower density TR designated properties are further east, which provides a natural transition from higher density to lower density. Changing the future land use of the site to be completely MUV would be consistent with development pattern of the area east of 415 as its primary residential. If the site were developed as MUV, it could continue to act as a transition of density. The proposed change is consistent with the comprehensive plan and the local plan, and it's expected to result in an increase of 170 daily trips and 15 p.m. peak hour trips. Volusia County Traffic Engineering also reviewed the project and did not express concern. So overall, staff recommends forwarding the future land use change to the County Council with a recommendation of approval. And now I'll also briefly touch on the zoning. So they're proposing a rezoning of the easternmost 6.01 acres from OTR1 to OMV, and the western 6.97 acres are already OMV. So OTR1 is intended for a typical single-family residential use on individual lots. OMV is more versatile as it can accommodate those same single-family residences, but also townhomes and multifamily housing. So this is apparent when you look at the dimensional standards for each class, as OTR1 requires 10,000 square foot lots compared to OMV's 2,000 square foot lots. In addition, OTR1 also requires a 10-foot side yard compared to OMV's 5-foot side yard that may be reduced to 0 feet for townhomes to account for common walls of interior units. So though the applicant is only proposing 3 more units than what is currently allowable, the request makes sense from a zoning perspective because of the type of housing they wish to build consistently across the entire site. Townhomes would not be possible within the OTR1 area. So overall, staff recommends approval or forwarding to the County Council with a recommendation of approval, and I'm available for comments or questions.
Any questions for staff? Anyone? Nope. In that case, if the applicant is present, you want to come forward, please.
I
Good
am.
morning.
Good morning. For the record, Mark Watts with the law firm of Cobb Cole, 231 North Woodland Boulevard, DeLand. Appreciate your time this morning. Appreciate the time that staff has spent with us working on this. This is really just sort of an adjustment of some mapping lines. If you look at the map that's in front of you now, this parcel has a split zoning and split land use. And there was a mapping error when the NARMA overlay was put in place. We've worked with environmental staff. They agree with that. They agree with the adjustment that's being proposed with this. They simply lack the administrative authority to process it. And so it has to go through as part of this overall process. But as the staff report indicates, this is a really, the purpose of the application is to be able to construct townhomes versus single family homes on the entirety of the property. As you can see, looking at the map in front of you, that's already possible on all of the property to the north, where you've got that Osteen, the mixed-use village, that extends on all of the depth of the property to the north. So there's really just making it consistent with what the adjacent property has, both from a zoning and a land use standpoint. It's a very slight increase with regard to the potential density, and as Stephen indicated, What we're proposing is about 3 additional units over what would be allowed as a maximum with the current as well. Next steps from here would be to get into the technical review and analysis for plats and everything else, the construction plans. Deltona is the utility provider here, so that'll likely come with an annexation into Deltona as well. They have the same zoning and the same land use under the JPA, so we process this through the county, and then ultimately it will go into the city for the development review side of things. So happy to answer any questions you might have, but I really kind of think this is really more of a housekeeping issue to address the split zone.
Any questions for the applicant? I have one question for
Yes,
you.
sir.
I'm just now skimming through the bottom here. So this is going to be serviced by Deltona Utilities?
Yes.
Water, sewer?
Yes.
And reclaim?
If available, yes.
If
I
available.
can't remember. If
Is it
it's-
currently on site or it's coming?
I don't recall if they've got reclaim lines out in this part of Osteen yet.
Okay.
But if it is, then they would be required to connect to it.
Are they going to annex into Deltona or stay?
Yeah, they would be required to covenant to annex, and if it's, if I think they're already adjacent, so likely they'll go ahead and process that.
Okay.
And that's why the plat and everything else would be processed through
Okay.
Deltona if that occurs.
All right, thank you. Nobody else have any questions for the applicant? No? All right, I'll let you know if you can come back if we have any public participation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any public participation on these cases?
No, sir.
No? All right, then we'll close the floor for public participation, and we will go open for commission discussion and/or a motion.
I'll be glad to make a motion.
Please proceed.
That case number CPA-24-006, small-scale comprehensive plan amendment from the Osteen Transitional Residential Future Land Use designation to the Osteen Mixed Use Village FLU designation be approved.
Second by Mr.
Yeah.
By Mr. Sixma.
Mhm.
All right, so I have a motion on the floor for case CPA-24-006 by Ms. Shelley and second by Mr. Sixma to find the future land use amendment consistent with a comprehensive plan and forward the application to the county council with a recommendation of approval to transit to the Florida Department of Commerce for expedited state review and to Volusia Growth Management Commission for certification. Any discussion on this motion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? This case passes unanimously. I will entertain a motion on the next case, please. The companion case.
I'll be glad to make that motion. I move that case number Z-24-010, rezoning from the Osteen Transitional Residential Zoning Classification to the Osteen Mixed Use Village Zoning Classification, be forwarded to the County Council for final action with a recommendation of approval.
Second.
I have a motion on the floor, case Z-24-010 by Ms. Edith Shelley, second by Stoney Sixma, to forward the rezoning case number Z-24-010 to the County Council for a final action with a recommendation of approval. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yep.
Case passes unanimously.
Thank you for your time this morning.
That's good. That's a good project for that area.
Um,
It's needed. Yeah.
If I can bring the commission's attention, so on the PUD that we tabled, the applicant has made it to the meeting. I would entertain a motion to reconsider the continuance and bring this back to the floor.
I make that motion.
Second.
So motion to bring case PUD-25-011 back to the -24-011 back to the floor for consideration. So I have a motion by Ms. Shelley and a second by Mr. Sixma. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Good morning, Mr.
Good
Stewart.
morning.
First of all,
Hang
thank
on,
you
before
very-
you get started, let's reread that case back into the record, please.
I just apologize. I had forgotten how efficient you guys are.
Yep.
This was it was moving along
We moved
today.
fast.
Give me a second to read that in.
Depends on the day.
So if I can have you read that case back into the record, please.
Yes, I'll be glad to.
Mhm.
Case number PUD-24-011, application of Storch Law Firm, attorney for Hinro LLC owners requesting a rezoning for the business planned unit development and resource corridor zoning classifications to the planned unit development, PUD, and resource corridor zoning classifications.
And this is Mr. Shams, which we heard from earlier. Do you have anything else to add, Mr. Shams? Or can we just call the applicant up?
Just a reinstatement of the PUD.
Okay, thank you. And then we'll call up the applicant.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Thank you very much. For the record, my name is Glenn Storch, and I represent Henbro, but also one of the partners of Henbro is a guy named Joe Yarborough. And Joe had bought this property years ago as part of his retirement. He unfortunately wasn't able to retire because he was required to redo the entire Riverview, riverfront park in Daytona Beach. And so he's put all of his time and effort into that right now, and unfortunately he forgot that there was a expiration on this. And so and I don't tell him, and the staff doesn't tell him. They don't give notices out, hey, your thing's getting ready to expire. So he did not notice that. And so I apologize, but it's basically the same thing. We've worked closely with staff. I really do appreciate the input they've given. We know that there's different criteria now. We're going to meet those criteria as well. So, and plus I think it was probably a little premature before, but now we're seeing some real interest in this area because of the space industry, so we anticipate something happening soon. If there are any questions? Okay.
Is this just a continuation of what expired back in '08, correct?
And again, the thing that I love about this site is this was where the Stuckey's was for years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Name from the past.
Yes. So yeah, because I'm old.
I think we all resemble that, right?
Any questions for the applicant? No questions for the applicant? All right, thank you. Do we have any public comment, participation rather?
No, sir.
None? All right, so we'll close the floor for public participation and open this up for a motion
Okay,
or discussion.
I'll make a motion that we forward this to County Council, case PUD 24011, with approval.
There we go. So I have a motion on the floor for PUD-24-011 by Mr. Sixma, second by Mr. Patterson, to forward the rezoning application case number PUD-24-011 to the County Council for a final action with a recommendation of approval. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Case passes unanimously.
And again, thank you very much. I really do apologize. I won't make that mistake again.
Hey, Glenn, I wanted you to know I had to fish this out of the recycle bin for you.
All right, and can we get to the final case, please?
Yes, case number O-25-004, ordinance 2025-06, Division 8, Stormwater Management Amendments.
And this is Tad.
Hi,
Oh,
Samantha
hi.
West.
Hi.
Sustainability and Resilience Manager for Volusia County. I just wanted to give a little update and history and timeline of what process this has gone through. And back in March of 2024, County Council gave direction for NRAC to look at our stormwater management regulations. NRAC then reviewed the regulations that Tad had presented at 4 different meetings. So that was in April, June, July, and December. In between that, they were also reviewing the LID regulations that you saw in November. Both the LID and these proposed stormwater management ordinance changes will be going to the February 11th County Council special meeting. With that, I'm going to give it to Tad so he can talk about all the details.
Thank you, Samantha. Again, Tad Casebeer, County Engineer. As Samantha noted, we went over quite a bit of information overall. I'm not going to go through all that. I'll spare you 4 meetings worth of going through all that. We'll go over the particular items that the committee recommended for the council's adoption. If you have any questions about any portion of it, I prefer to keep this informal, so if you've got a question, go ahead and ask at the appropriate time so we can hopefully explain some of that. I did not get into a large amount of detail simply because there are a lot of things and I don't know what you're familiar with regard to the stormwater rules. So again, if you have a question, if I'm explaining something and you're not following what I'm doing, please just let me know. So, all right, start the presentation. PowerPoint.
Oh,
There we go. Okay, I got it. I just want to make sure it's on. All right. So one of the aspects that we looked at were the different rules that govern stormwater. Volusia County obviously has rules and requirements on that aspect of it, but the state and the federal levels also have that. We reviewed those different things, and what we were looking for was anything that might leave a loophole or a gap, something along those lines. Also didn't want to require something that may already be covered by one of the other different levels of government overall. So the county's current stormwater rules are outlined above. We take a look at stormwater. We talk about two different things. We talk about quality, making sure that we're not creating water quality issues downstream. Areas like the Indian River, Tomoka River, areas where we have pristine water bodies, we're trying to protect those as much as possible, so our rules do have some aspects of water quality treatment overall. But the big one, the one that everybody's been talking about recently, is stormwater flooding attenuation, as we refer to it in the rules. We do have requirements on both of those elements. We do try to make sure that water quality is not negatively impacting anybody downstream. We also want to make sure with our flooding that we're not creating any undue conditions downstream. State rules on stormwater are very clear. The amount of water that comes from a site historically is what's allowed to come from that site. So if you have an undeveloped site and a certain amount of water runs off during a storm event, that amount is allowed to run off whether you leave the property as it is, or if you come in and make changes to that property, they're just simply regrading all the way through to putting impervious surface on it. So the ways that we make sure that we're not flooding anybody out is engineers are asked to go ahead and do a stormwater model of the pre-construction condition prior to a development, what kind of water would come off the site, both in terms of the speed with which it comes off, the rate as we generally refer to it, or the volume, making sure that we're not sending any more water downhill than previously done. And then after that, we go ahead and run a model that's based on what would happen if the development is to occur as it's outlined. We have different storms that we use for the pre and post comparison. In an open basin, we use a 25-year, 24-hour storm. That basically equates to about an 8-inch storm through most of Volusia County. It is localized. There are different rain amounts for different storms based on where you are, not just across the country, but also even in Volusia County. A 25-year, 24-hour storm in DeLand is not the same rain amount as it is in New Smyrna Beach, for example. The other criteria that we take a look at is a closed basin criteria. If the water does not have the ability to make its way downhill and ultimately end up as surface water at the ocean, it is considered a closed basin. Closed basin meaning that the only way that water would level would drop is through percolating and becoming groundwater overall. In those locations, we use a 100-year, 24-hour storm. And that's about 11.3 inches, 11.5, depending again where you are in the county. We use a higher storm in those cases simply because if there's any kind of issue, the bottom guy at the bottom of the bowl that is the closed basin ends up with all of that water. So we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to mitigate any potential issues in those closed basins. The one thing to note, and it commonly gets misunderstood, is that when rain falls, it becomes one of two things. It either becomes surface runoff or it becomes groundwater. Doesn't go anywhere else, doesn't do anything else. Certainly during the storm, there's no evaporation, there's none of those types of things. So in a closed basin, for example, that water falls and a portion of it becomes surface water, goes to the bottom. Surface water moves quicker, so it gets to that bottom quicker. Groundwater generally follows the same flow of the land, so to speak. So it will move, albeit more slowly, through the ground to that bottom area as well. So all the water in a closed basin, whether it's surface water or groundwater, is going to end up at that low spot in a closed basin. It just takes longer to get there. But either way, it has the same effect overall. Our typical methods for mitigating for the extra water that would be created as part of a new subdivision or a development, commercial site, industrial site, whatever it may be. Our best management practices, most common one that you see everywhere is either a retention pond, storm, or detention pond. They both generally look about the same. So the different rules changes that NRAC has made recommendations on for your consideration, the County Council's consideration, are based on making improvements to the existing stormwater rules. Keeping in mind that the stormwater rules are applied to new developments only. They are not retroactive. Anything that's been built prior to these being enacted will not be required to meet these. So any of the existing problems that you hear about, this will not fix those. All this would be looking towards is trying to prevent any future problems that may occur overall. So the recommendations that were made were tied to originally the seasonal high groundwater. Require when development is created, one of the things that you want to identify as a part of the existing site conditions are your seasonal high water table. It basically sets all of the elevations in any development overall. So for example, skip ahead just a second. When a stormwater pond is designed, it is the lowest spot on the piece of property. Gravity pulls water to the low spots, so that's where the water is directed, whether it's overland or it gets picked up and pulled into a stormwater pipe system. However it gets to that stormwater pond, the pond is the lowest spot. So establishing your design for your stormwater is all based on where the water level is when you have no rain, when you've got a normal condition overall. We actually go ahead and conservatively use the seasonal high water table, which means, you know, where would the water be during the wet season? Because obviously a stormwater pond is going to be most in use and needed during the stormwater or the rainy season. So we set that elevation as the design normal water level as circled on the exhibit. From there, when you model the storm, the amount of water that gets collected in your stormwater pond creates what we call a max stage. When you design your road network and your inlets that are collecting the water, or in a parking lot, if you collect just to have inlets, those inlets are all set above that max stage. And moving uphill from there, from those, you'd set your center line of elevation on your roads or your parking areas. And then your finished floor elevations for, if it's residential, for your family, single family homes, multifamily homes, whatever it may be, or your commercial sites are all set above that. So all of it's predicated initially on that seasonal high elevation. And if that's wrong, then everything else is wrong. And if it's too low, and in point of fact, you typically have water levels higher than your seasonal high, then the system is not going to work. And so that is why that's the most important elevation overall, and that's why we took a look at that aspect of making adjustments on that. So one of the things that NRAC recommended was to have the geotech or biologist, whichever one sets that seasonal high, and they take a look at different markers. If the water table is below ground, then the geologist would be the one setting it. They'd take borings. From those borings, they take a look at markers in the soil, because water, when it sits in soil, it leaves certain indicators of where that water table is on a regular basis. It won't always indicate where it was at the highest point, but that's not what seasonal high particularly means. It just means where it sits seasonally during that wet period. If the water is above grade, then a biologist would be setting it, because they'd be flagging the wetlands and identifying where that water level gets marked on vegetation and those other types of markers that might indicate that elevation. So what they're recommending is the application of a safety factor to that elevation. One of the things that we've seen overall, and if you watched the meeting on Tuesday, you've seen this graph. This is an indication of what rainfall has been like over the last 24 some odd years here in the city of DeLand. We just picked it because the information was immediately available. It will be different if you look at New Smyrna Beach, Ormond Beach, Daytona Beach, Deltona. But it was consistent information, and they had the information all the way back as far as 19 something, 23, 24, something along those lines. So it gave a good comparison for what's going on with regard to the rainfall. And the amount of rainfall is important. You can see back in 2000, we had rainfall of 42 inches. That's across the entire year. And then you see we had a wet period of about 3 or 4 years in there to include the hurricanes overall. And then you can see in 2008 we had Tropical Storm Faye and those types of things. And since then it's actually been a little bit on the lower side, which is a little bit below the red line, which is the average across this time period. And as you can see, though, the last 8 years that we've been well above, with the exception of 2 of those years, and both of those 2 years are pretty much right at the average. So why is this important? Well, what had happened in the past, as you can see, it was more fluctuation. You have high points, but they'd be followed by low points. I mean, the hurricanes in 2005, we got a lot of rain in those particular events, but the biggest problem was that the previous year we'd had 75 inches of rain. So that water does one of 2 things. It either makes its way to the St. Johns River on the west side, or on the east side, it ultimately makes its way to the ocean directly. And if you don't have those periods where you dry those things out, those areas, particularly like the closed basins, the water doesn't go anywhere. The levels don't drop. And those dry periods, so you can see in 2006, we only had 38 inches. And that was the lowest over that course of time. So all that water we got during those previous years had a chance to recede, had a chance to drop, had a chance to move through ground to get to either the river or the ocean and flatten things out. And then you see that again that we had that period there where we only had a little bit above the average, but almost all those years, 6, 7 years, were under the average. What we're seeing now over these last 8 is that not only is the fluctuation pretty much disappearing, it's flattening out. It's flattening out on the higher side of the average by about 6, 7 inches. And as such, the groundwater table doesn't have a chance to drop. And that's important because that affects that seasonal high elevation overall. If the amount of rainfall just keeps increasing, your seasonal high back when you had periods of dry period, you're not going to be at that seasonal high. Your seasonal high is going to keep changing. It's going to keep going up. The problem for our geotechnical engineers and our biologists is that the markers in the soils take a long period of time to set and establish. So if your seasonal high keeps increasing, the soils indicators or the above ground indicators are not keeping up with that rate. So one of the recommendations was to try to assist in that case to offset that issue was to add a safety factor of 6 inches to whatever elevation the geotech or the biologist set. What this does then is that basically sets the pond bottoms 6 inches higher, okay, and creates the need for at least 6 inches more of storage in those stormwater systems. This creates more volume overall. Some people had asked why we didn't go ahead and recommend increasing the design storm. You know, the 25-year, 24-hour, why didn't we make that a 50-year, 24-hour? Why didn't we make it a 100-year, 24-hour? Same thing for the closed basin as well. Why didn't we make it a bigger storm overall? The issue with that, to a certain extent, and the reason we did recommend the safety factor on the seasonal high is that when you're talking about a particular storm, yes, that event does occur. Could you make it a bigger? Sure. But that only occurs during that storm, and if that seasonal high is off in the first place, as noted, it's increasing. We don't know exactly how to forecast what it will be in the next few years because all we've seen is a standard increase or a regular increase, which is inconsistent with anything we've seen throughout the history of the area. It gives us something to put that on. When you run the storm and you assume that normal from our previous, if you weren't adding that safety factor, you just took it with the geotech or biologist, right? it would only occur during that particular storm. The safety factor in this case applies to any storm that might occur. As we all know, we don't get long periods sometimes between our rainfall events. We will get them right on top of each other. And if that pond hasn't recovered, that starting elevation, that design normal water level elevation may not be what's there. We just had a hurricane come through. You have a normal rainfall come through a week later. Those ponds haven't had a chance to recover and get back to what they were supposed to. So this, in point of fact, helps on a more, across a larger spectrum of events overall. It's always a built-in 6 inches. This is on top of a 1 foot freeboard that we require on the top of all of our ponds. So we already require that if your max stage is 28, that we require that any of your controls be set at 29 to make sure that we don't have issues overall, and understand that there is a variability to the weather patterns, and try to offset that. So between those two, we think that that accomplishes that goal, and it provides for a more consistent solution across those. Some of the other items that we looked at were the number of borings per site. Again, because the seasonal high elevation is so important, the more borings you do across a pond site, the better feel you've got for averaging what the seasonal high should be in that area. And so we moved, our code did not previously require X amount of borings, so we are putting that in. The water management, or pardon me, the DOT uses 2 borings per acre of the size of pond. That's what we've recommended as a part of this, that be put into our code as well. Curve numbers. When we prepare a model for a stormwater site, we make certain assumptions on the amount of runoff versus the amount of groundwater condition. It's not a percentage, but it's very similar to a percentage. We set those numbers 0 to 100, with 100 being basically impervious. Water doesn't move through it. So if the raindrop hits the ground, 100% of that raindrop is going to go ahead and become surface water and flow off. So obviously, green spaces, woods, lawns, plains, those types of things will have a better number than asphalt, concrete, those types of things. So it would be a lower number versus a higher number. The other factor that plays into how much water runs off in the curve number is the type of soil you have. If you have beach sand, water moves right through it, that number is going to be really low overall. And it is further factored into whether it's brush, open space, those types of things, all those characteristics. So we have standard tables for these types of things that we use. Part of the issue comes up is that there are what we call, they're basically soils that have characteristics of well-drained soils and poorly drained soils. A soils being well-drained soils, D soils being poorly drained soils. Per the USGS soils map for Volusia County, where they've gone through and they've evaluated soils conditions throughout areas of the county and identified these areas are, this is Immokalee fine sand, this is Tavares, this is Farmington. They've assigned soil types to each one of them. As you can see, I've highlighted, this is one of the tables in there and identifies A through D type soils. They have a group of them that are either A/D or B/D. And in that case, again, because when you look at the numbers, the difference between a B soil and a D soil on the same type, so let's see, take dirt at the bottom. So a B with just a dirt area is going to have an 82. So that's not too great, but it's not too bad either. You can see in a D soil where you have more clays mixed in, or maybe some more organic material in there, things that would impede the flow of water into the ground, you'd have an 89. So the number you use for that can have an effect on your stormwater model and can be, I won't say manipulated, but I mean manipulated, such that they may show that during the pre-construction condition that there's more runoff occurring than might actually be to shrink the size of their pond or their improvement. So when it's a split soil type, an A/D or a B/D, what we'd put into the code is that they have to go ahead and use the better case, in this case the one that holds more water on site and shows less runoff, so they've got to hold the bigger difference, or hold the biggest difference overall. And then the next factor that played into it that we took a look at was a tailwater condition. So in an open basin, when the water leaves your site, it goes into a ditch sometimes, may go into the river, something along those lines. We call that water level in that downstream area a tailwater. We need to know what elevation that tailwater is because it can change how your model works. The amount of water that leaves your site, when it can leave your site, all those different types of things. So on setting a tailwater, usually what happens is an engineer and the survey team, as a part of the initial design, would go out to an area where the tailwater would be occurring, and they would look for markers to indicate. So a lot of cases, let's say it's a canal downstream, they would go down, they'd find the first structure, be it a culvert or a head wall, something along those lines. And I'm sure you've seen these. They've, on those structures, they have stain lines where you can see where the water level generally rises to overall. They would identify that elevation and then factor that into their calculations as the tailwater condition. There can be a lot of variability, and as we talked about with regard to the seasonal high, because of the amount of rainfall we've had, the numbers should be just going up. Well, we wouldn't apply just a set 6-inch because the size of the basin can have a huge effect, and 6 inches wouldn't be appropriate for a really small basin, and certainly wouldn't be really appropriate for things like the Nova Canal, B19, those types of things. So what we would recommend is that prior to setting that elevation and running their first model, they engage the county staff. County staff go out, visit the site with them, and set what would be a conservative, or should be a conservative, downstream tailwater condition to make sure that everything is modeled as appropriately as possible. Instead of just, they set it, run a model, submit it, and then we've got to argue with them after the fact, and it just doesn't work out very well. We end up giving ground on certain things when we shouldn't be. There is a lot of professional opinion that goes into it, but better to have that discussion where you don't have a timeline or something along those lines hanging over everybody's head, and then there's more compromise than should occur. All right, and then the last item that was discussed and is recommended by NRAC and came up a little bit the other night is the stormwater pond locations on the new development. One of the things that you see sometimes, if you did pay attention to the meeting the other night, or if you're from this area, you saw it over on Orange Camp at the Publix shopping center down there. They had a stormwater pond. That stormwater pond sits not quite adjacent to Orange Camp, but fairly close. There was a small space in between. But the elevation on that pond was about 12 to 15 feet higher than that section of Orange Camp. And we got a large amount of rain, obviously through Milton. It caused, or it sent more water to that pond than that pond was designed to handle. And when we have a situation like that, one of the things we typically do is we'll put in an emergency weir or some type of structure that allows that water to overflow so that you don't have what happened there, which is a catastrophic failure. There was more water coming in, it overtopped, and because it didn't have a controlled way to get over the top of it, it cut into the grass slopes, and just like you'd expect with a large amount of water, it blew out one particular section of that pond. If there had been a little bit better design with regard to that aspect, considering the possibility that you might have a ridiculously large storm, I'm sure the engineer would have changed their design a little bit. So one of the things our code doesn't speak to a pond location or trying to deal with that type of situation. So that's what we're recommending as a part of this. One, the pond should be located central to the project, where your property is basically providing space from the exterior edge of your property, such that if the water overflows, it overflows your property before it leaves your property. And when it does so, it doesn't do so in such a manner that it would blow out any portion of your stormwater system. That's not always possible. This is a site here at the north end of DeLand. This is 17 north of where it splits from 1792. The Hampton Hotel, that area. They've also opened a Culver's just next to the hotel, so if you've been through that area, you see that. But all that area drops from the east side, the right side, down to Lake Gertie on the west side. And it's that's about a 30 to 40 foot drop in that space. And the stormwater pond is located on the western side of the yellow shapes there. It's the long north-south, irregularly shaped at the north end section there. And its downstream side, its western side, the elevation change from the bottom of the pond is about 8 to 12 feet along that side. So one of the things that you would do in a situation like that, you can't, because the site drops so much from the east to the west, there's no good way to center that pond that wouldn't cause a lot more other problems. So the recommendation is not that we don't allow a situation like this, but there are certain things that can be done. So in this case, the design included what we called a clay core through that downstream wall, which does not allow water to seep through on that western side. The structure, or the pond, also includes an emergency overflow weir that is not a box structure like you see in a lot of these stormwater ponds, but it's a concrete weir over that edge that is set below the elevation of the top of bank that allows that water to, if it gets a catastrophic storm or something that hasn't been anticipated, that water flows through that aspect and doesn't cause the same problem we have down with the Publix pond. So that's what the rules recommendation is, that if your pond is adjacent to your property line and the property adjacent is lower adjacent to your pond, that they would need to provide some controls that would be approved by the county staff to make sure that a catastrophic event like you saw at Publix does not occur. So that's the recommendations that have been made. If you care to go through the language, we can certainly do that. You've been provided it, but if you have any questions, I know it's an exciting topic, but
You have no idea how exciting the topic is. Thank you. Any questions for the presenter before I get started?
I think one question I have is, when these go through, if these go through, what happens with existing developments that are already in progress that don't meet or exceed these regulations?
A big part of that, and Colin can speak to it probably better than I can, will depend on how the county council, when they approve it, whether or not they'll set an effective date. And go ahead and yell at me if I'm using the terms improperly, but they'll set an effective date. And generally the way it works is, based on that effective date, any applications that have already been received continue forward with the rules as they are. And then anything that's received after that. Now they have I think there's some legal authority to go ahead and apply that to any developments where the applications have not been issued, but again, I'll allow Parker to speak
There's
to what they're
usually,
options.
when you make major changes like these, usually applications in process or that have already been received, they're considered grandfathered. One of the things you can do is time out applications that have been issued, so long as they have, if they haven't actually constructed it. So for example, a PPL, preliminary plat or construction plan, is good for X number of years, and then it expires, and then you have to redo it in compliance with the new standards, assuming you haven't done any construction. So, but typically if there is, if an application is already underway under the then existing rules or has been issued, there's a grandfather kind of safe harbor period that is typical of any type of these, horizontal development type changes.
Just, as you're, I mean, I've gone through it page by page, not that I, but, you know, I know this is addressing future, not the current, but as you're doing, or as this study, or if it's going forward, is the current, are the current developments taken, you know, the impervious versus the pervious soil? So is it taken into effect that we have all the amount of pervious we have moving forward, or is it just estimating? Am I making sense? Because we've had a lot of development.
Right.
And so our pervious land has probably increased quite a bit.
Correct.
So as this is going through and being addressed, is that taken in effect? Or I guess this is just looking at the future?
What this will look
you don't say,
like.
well, we're going to have more runoff because of X, Y, Z.
Sure. When somebody comes in to develop a parcel, they do take a look at the existing conditions, not just on their parcel, but on the surrounding parcels.
Okay.
So, for example, not that we covered any aspect of it, but if somebody is uphill of this development that's being done, you know, they do take a look at what amount of water is coming off of that uphill development to their property, because they're required to continue to accept that water.
Okay.
And so, yes, they do take a look at things in the surrounding area.
In the surrounding area is not
correct, but
okay.
you know, they're not going to look at something that isn't a direct effect to the stormwater model in that particular area.
Okay.
If that's kind of what you're asking.
So, and this is coordinated with each city, or is the county over
It's in,
each city?
The way the rules work is the county has, per the charter, a county minimum standard for certain aspects under the environmental. Stormwater is one of those. The county does have in Chapter 50 set requirements that have to be applied, whether it's unincorporated or inside the city. Cities have to meet that standard. They can make it tougher, but they cannot loosen it up.
Go below.
This in particular is not applying to Chapter 50. This is applying to Chapter 72, which is our own rule. Obviously, we have to abide by what we have in Chapter 50, but it's not exactly the same. We do have some differences, and that's what these differences are being applied to.
Okay.
Chapter 50 would require a change to the charter and coordination with the cities, and it's a lot more onerous. I believe the goal at this point is really, we can make a change to Chapter 72 and start applying that to our own developments a heck of a lot quicker. No reason to wait. Let's go ahead and start applying that now and get that moving.
Then going back through, okay, gotcha. Okay. I'll think of some more. Go ahead. While you're,
Okay, so let me start by saying that I have some direct experience with stormwater management in the sense that, and planning in the sense from a development standpoint, developing properties for the last 25 plus years. So I'm familiar with the process and the inner workings and the hoops that have to be jumped through. What I'm not familiar with is is NRAC and the folks who are on that staff for NRAC. So my question directly is going to be, when this ordinance was put together and these suggestions, I should say, were implemented, was anyone from outside of the county, say in the private sector that works in stormwater management engineers, were they brought into the mix and asked an opinion or run through the ringer as far as question, how this would apply?
Sure, I understand the question. NRAC is a citizen committee. It is made up of a different range of professionals. It does include 2 or 3 engineers. 2 engineers, Tyler Malmberg and Michelle Whittick, both of which have done site development. Tyler worked for the Department of Transportation, does stormwater. He does projects on both roads and site. Michelle's background was site civil, those aspects. There are others in the group that are familiar and understand stormwater and its ramifications. But we did, as a part of this, go through them in the very first meeting. We didn't jump right into let's make rules. We spent quite a bit of time explaining how development goes through the process. overall in the calculations and those different types of things to make sure that those that didn't have the set background. But it's not a staff-driven group. It is made up of citizen professionals.
All right. And I just want to say that, I mean, stormwater management is an important aspect that needs to be addressed. What this doesn't address is the maintenance of our current stormwater system and canal systems, but that's a whole different topic.
Right. That's
And I
not
think
something that gets
that would take care of some of the other issues that keep getting brought up, but this is a good start. I did, in fact, reach out to 3 different engineers that I've worked with in the very recent past on different development projects and kind of go over some of these suggested implementations. And I do have a few takeaways that I'd like to throw in here for consideration if possible. And the first one would be on page 2 of the ordinance, which is line 59. When we're talking about the 2 borings, and historically, obviously, borings are done prior to any kind of site plan layout. You bore the site, kind of figure out where you're going to put your stuff. So once the ponds are designed, they don't necessarily line up with the existing borings. So now we're bringing in new borings. What I would like to see is that in this particular 2 borings per site per acre, that we put there for ponds greater than 1 acre in size, because we have plenty of ponds that are under an acre in size. I think that would be overkill to have 2 borings on under an acre size pond. That's an opinion. That's an.
I don't mind telling you, professionally, I would disagree with that.
Okay.
Part of what you find with soils borings and is that they can be quite different from one spot to another. When you take a look at your seasonal high, even across an acre, you can see quite a bit of variability depending on what those soils conditions are. So I'm never in favor, and I'm not applying this to the rules. I did site development for years before I came over to the county to do this type of work. Worked at the Department of Transportation myself, and you see too much variability on these smaller ponds, and I would always require the geotech engineer to go ahead and put 2 bond borings in there. They would prefer to do that. Making a professional judgment based on 1 boring is not a good way to be.
On a 10,000 acre pond, you would still require, you request a two borings on a 10,000 acre pond?
And most of the time, your ponds aren't going to be that small. That's 10,000 acre?
No, 10,000 square feet.
Okay.
Acre.
You want me? That's what you meant, but I'm like
square feet.
Yeah.
10,000 square feet.
Yes, in most cases, even then, I would prefer to go ahead and have that. Usually, it's not a 10,000 square foot pond by itself. It's usually tied to something larger. If your site is only an acre overall, then you might take a look at a little bit different factors and have a slightly different opinion. But we do, I believe we had left some leeway in there for county staff to make some recommendations on that aspect of it. So.
All right, so this is the final document, that's what you're telling me. These are not final recommendations?
No, they are final.
They are final recommendations, okay. So then I go back to my original statement, then that, to me, that line in there that for ponds greater than an acre in size would be a requirement for my approval on this one. So we'll go on to the next page, which is page 3, and let's talk about line 93, 94, 95. We're talking about design calculations, and it's the last sentence that I've got a little bit of trouble with. It's so equal to the highest measured seasonal high water plus 6 inches. Personal preference, I'd like to see that to read average based on this what you had up there before. I think the average plus 6 inches would be adequate. I think that you adding that extra highest is going to create some design element issues and construction issues down the road. But I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, again, the concern in this case is that the seasonal high is changing based on the rain pattern that we've had. And so you're making an assumption that we don't have a basis for, there's no such, as far as I'm aware, ability to project what a seasonal high will be if the rain continues to stay at the level it's at or grow a little bit more as it seems to be doing over the last 8-9 years. So as such, I think it's a gray area overall that I'm more comfortable with it being tied to the highest. Obviously,
I'm more comfortable with average. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a difference of opinions.
Well,
Yeah.
The problem and the concern with a lot of this, and part of the reason I would recommend being conservative, is once this gets constructed, there's no fixing it.
Right.
You know, there's no coming back and changing the pond, raising your entire site once your site is constructed overall. And I understand and appreciate what it does. And it may be the reason that some of the people that don't like flooding would actually agree with you as opposed to me, is that what this would do is going to increase the amount of fill that you're going to bring to your site, raising your site overall. So certainly understand.
Okay. And then we go to, let's go to page 4 of 6. Then we're talking about the ponds being internal to the project. Obviously, it creates such a site design issue, putting that pond smack dab in the center and and trying to design around that.
Sure, and that's why we acknowledge that there are situations like the Hampton Inn site that doesn't work. That's why we did put in here that the CDE is the community or the county development engineer, which is the assistant county engineer. She may require or allow for that to occur, but then require things like a clay core or the weir in those cases. So we're not saying it absolutely has to be. Again, their sites, the Hampton Inn site is a perfect example. Even the public site to a certain extent, it could be argued. You need to put the pond at that location. Okay, we understand that, but then you have to take make modifications to your design to prevent what has occurred.
Right. I mean, the failure of obviously of those berms and those ponds is definitely of concern, and we're making strides towards that. But I'm also trying to keep this where it's actually we can continue building, within a certain extent.
Again, I've been on that side. I fully understand, and I don't think that any of these are that big a problem. I'm sure if you asked the developer that built the Publix, who's now going to have to go in there and retrofit all of that, he would have rather paid for a clay core and a weir ahead of schedule or ahead
at the
of
time. Yeah. Well, it's possibly, and
for the engineer's insurance company would prefer that if that's the case.
Hopefully they had good insurance. Yes. Short of that, I mean, you've got a few changes here and there. I mean, nothing that I really need to bring up at this point. I think that we're making strides in the right direction. The language is what's troubling for me, and not being by admission, not being an expert in stormwater management, but relying on those who are smarter than I am as far as that is concerned. I would like to see more input from that private sector on that before this gets approved. But I'm willing to move this forward to the county council and let them bring those comments forward and let the private sector come in and basically have their time in front of them. So, anybody else have anything else to add or to say?
About the number of borings, and this is just, I'm not familiar with this type of construction or whatever. 2 borings per acre. If it's a 10-acre pond, would there be an inclination of someone who wanted to group them all together? Or is there some way to state that it has to be spread out over each acre?
I could say that's the way the county staff would be interpreting it, is that it would need to be spread over that area. Representative. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? No? Thank you.
Yep.
Do we have any public participation on this one? Yep, here we go. We got one. Come on up. I don't have a sheet, so I'm assuming yeah. Name and address for the record, please.
Good morning, Mike Woods, Cobb Cole, 231 North Woodland Boulevard. Here on behalf of kind of myself as a citizen and generally supportive of what's coming forward. But I wanted to come up in part from some of the conversation with you, Mr. Costa, and with Tad. Sometimes you guys have heard me talk about how our regulations come forward, and it's usually driven by never again rather than by what we want to see. And that's okay. And I don't think that's what's happening here, because these regulations were already underway well before the hurricanes kind of came through. It's just the hurricanes now have shown us kind of the worst case scenario, and we can kind of take input from that. Most of what is being adopted here, and also with the LID standards, and that's really why I'm coming up here, because I want you to consider how these are going to be working with the new LID standards that have come before you and will be coming in front of the county council, because I think in conjunction it works out really well. And I think we'll probably go to resolve some of your concerns about an overreach or an overstep. But you guys have a pretty big role in this too moving forward, because even on this, your regulation, right, whether it's the average or the mean high, reasonable experts can debate about that. And then the 6-inch, it probably could have been 8 and that would have been passable, could have been 4. And that's all okay and kind of built into it when we're talking about the context. What Tad provided here about these regulations, that context is the most critical part, because we're trying to remember, okay, what were we thinking about? What was really the underlying thought process for what that final number is in the code? But the problem that we sometimes have is, well, one, we will look back at this time and there may be a consideration that these regulations are in direct response to the hurricanes. And they're not, because even as bad as the hurricane impacts have been, percentage-wise, overall total properties, very low. And the projects that have been most recently designed did fairly well, notwithstanding the blowout of certain projects. But what ends up happening oftentimes with these regs is that 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we kind of forget the nuance and the why. And then we act with a lot of rigidity, right? The number's in there for a reason, and when someone comes in asking for a variance or from relief, it's like, it's a giveaway to the developer. Well, there's a good reason for it. But here we've just kind of talked about that there's that basic information. Now, I bring up the LID because I feel LID is trying to be responsive to that. We've got a lot of rigid regulations that when they're kind of been added together and they're all been very good, it's almost like a Tetris block coming down and you get these gaps. And the LID standards coming forward kind of help smooth that out and gives it more fluidity, you know, no pun intended there, for some of our regulations. But kind of the adage of once taxes go up, they never come down. Regulations get added and they never get withdrawn. I mean, we can go into a, you know, we may find this is an aberration of rain. I don't necessarily think that's the case, but if we're back into drought conditions, it's not like we're going to revoke that back, because again, how dare you, you're taking away, it's a giveaway to the development. And even in these kind of conditions, the LID standards tell you to put your stormwater ponds in the low depressional area. What's that conflict that's going to be when that low depressional area is on the edge? Now, I think they've got a resolution. It's about the engineering and stuff. But all I'm trying to say here, and again, I'm in support of these regulations as they are drafted here, is remember your role. Some of you have been here since the '04 hurricanes when we had other regulations and our closed and open basins came in. But when a variance comes up or staff is trying to come up with a better project and the regulations are kind of grinding against themselves, that's where that role of this organization, this body, kind of comes in to support that variance. And the best analogy I can kind of give you is, I don't know if you've ever seen, there's a YouTube channel where folks that are driving like U-Hauls that don't normally drive it, they hit the low-hanging bridge and they kind of get stuck. And the best simple solution when you kind of find that is you let the air pressure out of the tires and it lowers it down. When it's a regulatory kind of context, oftentimes we have felt in the past that there's no way that the tire pressure cannot be changed. So you're either told to go reconstruct the entire vehicle or just chop off the roof and move forward. And you can get under that pass, but you've got a truck that now no longer has a roof and nobody's happy with it. So I think with these regulations here, they serve a good purpose. I look forward to seeing with the LID and trying to take what we have and then making sure that we don't just look at the elements in the code specifically, but the reasoning behind it to come to a better project. And I think we're pivoting towards that. And I just, you know, from my 2 cents, I think this is in keeping with that, and I feel much more comfortable. Some of those concerns I would otherwise have with you, I think we've got, the tide is moving in the right direction to be able to resolve that properly. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other public comments? No? No? All right, any other questions for staff before we close the floor?
Mr. Chair, just a point of procedure. So
Yes.
this is going to a special meeting on February 11th, 2025 at 4 p.m. It is going to be heard together with the two low-impact development or LID ordinances because, as you know, Mike pointed out, they're working together and they've been in development for I don't know how many months, if not a year. One of the things that we're going to do is, you know, leave this particular ordinance kind of a little bit more open than, you know, for discussion. So, you know, anyone can attend if they have, you know, any additional recommendations or additional comments. It's going to be on these two particular sections, 72, 728 and 29, 778 and 779. So, you know, those two sections can be what's discussed. Can't go outside of that because that becomes a noticing issue, but
Can you give me that date one more time on the special meeting, please?
sure, it's February 11th, 2025.
That's prior to our next meeting.
Yes, it's going to be at 4 p.m. here in the auditorium.
So what, if I hear, I just understood you correctly, this ordinance as it's currently written then is still fluid? It's
Yes,
not concrete?
yes. Within those two sections, 72, 778 and 72, 779, you know, anyone can show up and the county council, it's a special meeting, they can act, they can make any amendments and changes.
Okay. In that case, then I have a different perspective. All right. Thank you. Anyone else? All right, so we're going to close the floor for public participation and open the floor for staff discussion and or motion. So before we start with the motion, let me just say from a discussion standpoint that my initial intent here was to vote no on this, specifically because I think it still needs a little bit of tweaking here and there. I'd like to see more private sector participation, but now knowing that we've got a special meeting going through, I have no problem moving this forward to get it to that meeting, and then putting that word out so that the private sector then has the opportunity to go in there and voice their concerns and or improvements to what's on here. I think that we're making strides in the right direction. I just didn't want to see a big knee-jerk reaction to the situation that occurred, but more of a methodical and educated reaction. And with that, I'll take either a motion or more comments.
I'll be glad to make a motion.
Please go ahead.
I move that the PLDRC forward ordinance 2025-06 to the county council with a recommendation of approval.
Let me back that. Is it 25004?
Ordinance number 2025-06.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
All right, and a second. So we have a motion on the floor from Ms. Edith Shelley and a second from Mr. Patterson on ordinance number 25-06, which is actually case number 0-25-004. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right. That concludes the items on the agenda. We have any other public items?
No, sir.
Do we have any staff comments?
No, sir.
Any commission comments? Yes, ma'am.
I have a couple. Just that I had actually more things missing from my packet once I saw the agenda. This has just never occurred. I'm not pointing fingers, but just I don't know if it's supposed, whatever. But I had several items missing from my packet, and also no agenda in my packet. So I was therefore not able to even realize those items were missing. And I just hope we can find some way to correct this. And the post office utterly destroyed half of it too. It was torn apart and taped together, and it came really late as well. I only got it Tuesday.
If I can piggyback on that one, yes, my envelope didn't have any tape, so the pages were actually sticking out of the sides of the envelope.
Yep,
Perhaps,
ditto, mine's the same way.
Perhaps maybe we should go to the Tyvek type envelopes that are a little bit stronger than just the standard paper ones.
If we're going to mail.
If we're going to continue mailing.
Yeah.
And they make them in a larger size as well, I think, because this was a rather large package. I know that you did not receive your package at all. It probably destroyed through the mail system itself, and and they didn't even bother to deliver in your empty envelope. But yeah, I think that was problematic. And I know that we all got emails, or we should have gotten an email basically saying it was available online.
That's not the same.
And it's not the same, but it was an opportunity to squawk,
Yeah.
and I'm sure that staff would have made some kind of exception and either brought you one out or remailed it. So that was a comment on our part.
Excellent point.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Nope.
I do have one. I'm hoping that our chair will be back next month. This is two times in a row, and well, I'm getting better at it. I'm still not comfortable with it, so I hope that speedy recovery for him, that he's back here next month.
You did a fine job.
Thank you. Any press and citizen comments? No? Well, with that, we are adjourned.